There has never been a better time in history to be born female.
No interviewer, no journalists, just two legends.
Thank you for giving us 2 words and a hashtag that help free us, because we are all Me Too's.
Power only understands power. Power will look for weakness in the opponent. I do not reflect weakness.
My time with the Spice Girls, when we put our energies and ambitions together, we were formidable.
I did question, why am I here? Continually throughout my life.
And it was a total shock to see right across Africa, forests disappearing, chimpanzee numbers dropping.
Foreign correspondents can be in this very, very precarious position of actually tilting things.
Trailblazing women sharing their truths and how they created their unique path to success. Inspiring, revealing, empowering. This episode of The Power of Women is Sadie Frost, respected British actress, producer, director, and award-winning fashion designer. Rose McGowan, American actress, director, author, women's rights activist.
I kept waiting for someone else to do what I did. I kept waiting and waiting, and I was like, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. When my dad was dying, because he had Hep C, and we were estranged, I still couldn't kind of forgive him on his deathbed. So, Sadie Frost. Hello. Hello. How you doing? I'm wonderful. How are you? Pretty good. So your father was an artist too? Mine was also. Yeah, so he was a psychedelic 60s artist. Yeah. What about your dad? My dad did a lot of really psychedelic stuff.
Oh,
Probably
really?
also did a lot of psychedelics. He was an artist, but also led a commune in Italy called Children of God, and that later became known as a cult. It was a really interesting way to grow up with a lot of characters. It was multinational, so it was people from like all over the world and a lot of artists. But we were raised largely without mirrors, so not as a race or a gender. Then I got thrown into America like in the late 80s, so that was kind of crazy.
So you were born in Italy?
Yeah.
What part?
Tuscany.
And then how many people lived in this commune?
About 130. There was a duke that was in the group, so I grew up on a ducal estate. So it's very funny because a lot of press always paints me as this tragic figure. We're so sorry for how you grew up. I got sent to America in the late 80s and landed on a Navy base, and I'm like, I'm so sorry for how you live. You know, I was like, I was okay.
That part of my life was actually the good part, like living in that like environment.
It was hectic,
yeah.
In a way. I was kind of like a spy for my father if people were trying to overthrow him. Or...
Was he the head
Yeah.
of the cult?
Yeah. Not of the whole thing. There were about 120 chapters worldwide. The Phoenix family grew up in it, but in Venezuela. And I grew up in Tuscany.
And what made, when you were 10, you moved to America?
Well, they were human trafficking the women in the group,
Right.
and they were having them do something called flirty fishing, and they called that hookers for Jesus. Nice, very nice.
My God.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things they did. They just sent the women out to
Seduce men.
to bring them in to the cult.
And they'd wake up and they would, kind of have a fling with a woman and then slowly get indoctrinated and kind of
Was there a
find
lot
themselves.
of drugs involved in the cult?
Actually not at that point. I think my father did it to get away from drugs because he was in Venice, California in the 70s, early 70s, and was just, I think, off his rocker at that point. But creating his artwork was incredible. He was an airbrush artist and he did really magical realism kind of, really amazing stuff.
So when this kind of human trafficking thing got busted, then you got sent back to America?
It didn't get busted.
Oh, it didn't?
No, my dad just chose to leave.
He just realized it was all too
much. And they were starting to advocate child-adult sex.
Oh.
So that would be a negative. Luckily, he got us out of there. But it's funny because America was just really an unwelcoming place for me. It was hard. I spoke a different language. I looked weird to them. And
Can you still speak Italian?
I don't. I speak it in my sleep.
Right.
Weirdly
so
enough.
somewhere in your subconscious.
It's there.
It's there.
My name is Rose McGowan, and I am brave, and I am you.
Rose McGowan, American actress, director and women's rights activist. McGowan rose to fame playing parts in successful cult movies such as Scream, directed by Wes Craven, Death Proof, directed by Quentin Tarantino, Jawbreaker, directed by Darren Stein, and Conan the Barbarian, directed by John Milius. Her role as Paige Matthews in the successful supernatural drama series Charmed made her a household name. Rose is respected for her contribution to independent film, and her directing debut with Dawn brought her critically acclaimed reviews. Her memoirs book, Brave, was a New York Times bestseller. It delivered a wake-up call to the entertainment industry and society as a whole. As a strong activist for women's rights, her part in the Me Too movement sparked a global campaign to end sexual harassment and assault. Over a period of 10 days, Rose was arrested, met with the former president Barack Obama, and became one of Times Magazine's People of the Year. All while navigating around the minefield of those trying to silence her. Her Rose Army social media platform and her special punk brand of activism has proven a powerful success. Her tireless work as an activist has assisted to massive social change throughout the world for women's rights. By going up against the Hollywood machine, McGowan has shown true courage in the face of adversity, and she fights back against those who have hurt so many, including her. Sadie Frost. With over 3 decades in the entertainment industry, she has earned success and respect as an actress, independent filmmaker, producer, and award-winning fashion designer. Her production company, Blonde to Black Pictures, produces challenging, award-winning, essential quality films that speak for themselves. The genre and style are all specific personal visions of Sadie, nurturing and developing new emerging talent. Her acting career she varied, from parts in the Oscar-nominated movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, where she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She starred in and co-produced a multitude of other successful films, one of which was Shopping, with her former husband, Jude Law. Frost French was an award-winning, successful, ready-to-wear fashion brand, which Sadie and her partner Jemima French founded. They designed full women's wear collection and had several fashion shows, also at the renowned London Fashion Week.
So when you got to America, where did you go? Which part?
The Northwest. It's very rainy and gray, and there's a lot of people with trucks with guns in them. And
Was that your first impression?
yes, and orange cheese. That was my first impression of America. Like definitely processed orange cheese.
I mean, I've kind of seen you from afar, and it was funny because we were having dinner next to each other once. We got a mutual friend, and I saw you were helping a homeless person in the street, and then you started crying, and I was like, God, this is really weird, because this is where I live in Primrose Hill, and I know all the homeless people, and you were doing what I do, which is I'm always helping the homeless people. I was like, it's weird because we're from completely different parts of the world, but we're in the same place, having dinner next to each other, and we both behave the same way to help trying. I saw there was a huge amount of compassion in you, that you left your table and was helping this guy. I actually, my father was an artist. I grew up in England. I was involved in a cult. My stepfather was a Bhagwan Rajneesh.
Okay.
Yeah, so my family was part of that.
I know about that because when we moved to Oregon, which is in the Northwest, we moved very close to where the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was. I would see his Rolls Royces go by.
Yeah. So there's a lot of similarities, and I have 10 siblings in my family. So my mum and dad were both married 3 times, or had 3 different partners. So there's 10 of us. I've got 5 brothers and there's 5 girls. And my mum had me when she was 16, so I grew up with, and then lived on a bus for a few years, and then we lived kind of in different artist communes and squats and blah, blah, blah. So we've had a lot in common, really.
That's so strange.
It's really strange, isn't it?
I think about growing up traditionally, and frankly, I get anxiety about it. I think if I had grown up in the middle of America and never traveled, and not saying nobody travels in the middle of America, but you know, if that was my life, one where I didn't travel and I was stationary and went to the same school and knew the same people, I can't quite imagine that. We were kind of like the Addams family on every street.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a stigma to my family, and there was like, we had the social services involved, and my dad was in prison, and I was very embarrassed by my family. And in fact, when my dad was dying, because he had Hep C, and we were estranged, I still couldn't forgive him on his deathbed. But my childhood did create a lot of problems for me as a person that's taken all the way through my life. I've had to fight demons, like memories from very early on. I'm a very strong person, but very sensitive. My relationship with my dad was very volatile, and he had schizophrenia, and he was quite crazy, and he did a lot of quite violent things. Meant that my relationship with men was never that good. I was always reliving that relationship. I mean, it's very kind of textbook kind of psychology, but I just had a real problem with relationships. But I did want to have some kind of conventional life and stability, And that, I think, came out in me having 4 kids and wanting to be a mum and do everything like very kind of proper and OCD, which came at a price as well. So it's interesting the way you kind of go full circle.
It's so wild. My father was, he wouldn't get diagnosed, but he was super bipolar. I could diagnose him. And in my book, Brave, I wrote about our relationship. And he also died of hepatitis C. And it felt like we needed 10 more years probably to heal a lot of things. And while I was writing my book, I was so angry at him for being such a dickhead. And he too was very violent. We lived together in this flat, and he wouldn't buy me utensils or bedding. He said I wasn't worth it. But the weird part is that, you didn't know if you were walking in the door, if you were going to get hugged or thrown down a flight of staircases.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were going to get.
You didn't know what you were going to get. It was always like and you couldn't really invite people over because you couldn't explain, nor did you want to. And it's a really complex relationship, the dad thing. And especially when they're a really outsized personality, right? And what I did was, I thought I had escaped going out with people like him. And at one point I went out with someone and I said to him, I was like, oh my God, you've taught my father in cruelty. Because they can.
What I've been trying to work out is if you are attracted to people that maybe have a similar trait, or you cause people to become like that. So things like being, narcissistic or, ego-driven and controlling, like that kind of control thing.
It sounds like you went out with the same person I did.
It's similar kind of thing.
It's very similar, but it's also kind of like you made me or did I make you?
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I did go out with someone who was bipolar also, so that at least I know I didn't cause that.
Yeah.
I can safely say that.
They had that before.
He had all that on his own. Special person.
Is your mother still alive?
My mother is, and it's interesting. I was so embarrassed. I was in a meeting the other day, and they asked me to write a letter to my mother for this thing I'm going to do, and I'd been in the meeting for about 3 minutes, and I started to cry. Because my mother is so absent in my life, and after my dad died, I redoubled my efforts to try to have a relationship with her, but you can't have a relationship with someone who doesn't want one. You can't force it. And I fail to understand because I'm like, I'm a cool kid. I would want to be my friend.
That's really sad. It feels like you've been really abandoned. I feel that from you. I feel like you just need to have someone like give you like a really big hug. You need to be looked after. You deserve to be looked after. And I think that's what I fought for my whole life, is to have that stability and have someone look after me. Because what happens if you have the childhood in a way we've had, and there's been people that have had a lot worse a childhood, and I know abuse or whatever, but you have a fragility about you, but you want to fight you have to have strength. You have to fight. That's what gives you your drive to just do the things you want to do.
And there was no backup for us. There's no plan B. There's no insurance for the kids, even though there was money for that. There was no, anything. And I wonder, if my relationship with my mom is because...
Why do you think she's like that?
I think...
How old was she when she had you?
She was 19.
And where do you come in the...
I'm the oldest girl,
right.
Which is why I think I didn't have kids, because I took care of all my brothers and sisters, and I downloaded how hard it is. And I just thought...
Did you never want to have kids, or do you still want to have kids?
I physically never wanted to have a child. I knew I never wanted to physically have a child. I'm brave. I'm really, really brave. That was my dad's nickname for me, the brave one. But I'm not that brave.
But that was like your outside persona. You're going to put this brave front on. I mean, and I did that to a certain, but then there's this vulnerability. And also people might, I built up like lots of layers so people would think I was cold or bitchy or this or that. I'm actually really terrified and hurting inside.
They used to call me Ice Queen at school.
Exactly. So it's a similar thing. So you think because you were the first girl, there is often that thing with first girl mother. It's hard for
I don't know. I think in the commune, there were multiple people caring for the kid or the babies, and when you grew up, and I think I had one therapist. I haven't gone to that many. I should.
Therapy, like everyone goes, go to a therapist.
It didn't work.
It doesn't really work.
Not for me.
It was just going round and round in circles and not concentrating, trying to find the positive, like mindfulness. Think of that's why I think meditation, spirituality, mindfulness can really work, because you're looking at changing for the positive, not keep going, oh, what does your dad do, and and I'm going through the same old thing. It's just like...
And I found it really hard with therapists who seemed conventional or lived what I sensed were kind of more conventional lives. And when you live a very unconventional life, comparatively, it's almost like you're the most interesting patient they have and they want to keep hearing your cliffhangers.
Well,
That's how I felt.
It's a business, it's a money-making thing. They don't want to make you get better because they want you to keep coming back.
It can't be all of them, but the ones that I saw.
Well, that's how I feel after 40 years of it.
No, I have respect for therapists, but I was always like, I'm in a happy mood today, and at 4 o'clock I have to go to therapy, and that's going to depress the hell out of me, so I would just cancel and pay the missing fee. No, it was, and then it made it very unusual for me because when I grew up, I get asked a lot, what were your hopes and dreams? I was like, I didn't have any, I was surviving. I was literally just surviving. Although I knew I was going to be famous, although I never tried, and then later I was discovered. So I never went to Hollywood.
I felt like you knew that was going to happen.
I knew, but I also knew it wasn't the big deal in my life. I also knew it was something I was going to have to endure and get through. I didn't know it was going to take as long as it did. I didn't think it would be 20 years of it. But it was also, when you get famous so quickly, people are like, what did you want to do? I'm like, I was, 17. And then what other job are you going to get once you're famous? Not that and you live in such a bizarre world, and it replicates for me. My book, I compare the cult I grew up in to the cult of Hollywood and how it affects your mind in ways you're not aware of, as told through an autobiography. But I found Hollywood to be very cultish. Like, don't leave here. Don't tell anybody what goes on here. Keep it private, keep it all inner sanctum, and we all cover for each other. And that's why I just kind of called time on it. That was just something that, and for me now where I'm at is just getting out of, they say when you're in a cult you have like 70-something percentile chance of joining another one. And I feel like that's what happened to me with Hollywood.
I feel like you wanted to be part of something.
No, because I didn't relate to the people in Hollywood at all. And they thought I was weird and I thought they were weird. So that was kind of where we stayed. And then I was blacklisted so young, after being assaulted in Hollywood.
How many years ago was that? Because I know about you and have followed you a bit, but I don't, being in England, you don't know as much.
I was 21, and it's interesting because I always knew I was going to be raped at some point in my life. And usually it happens, even me, like last year with all the craziness going on, I look back and I was like, oh, that man that slept with me when I was 15 and he was 35, I was attracted to him, so I'd always chalk that up to a sexual experience. But looking back, you're like, technically that's child molestation. So it's hard to couch some of it, but I think the assault was so cut and dry an assault, it didn't.
I mean, it's interesting because sometimes when you're experiencing things yourself, you try to forget about things that happened in the past or whatever, and the way something that put things in perspective for me was obviously highlighting what everyone has highlighted over the last few years. But for me, having an 18-year-old daughter, I've gone back in my time and gone, that thing that happened to me when I was 16, if that happened to my daughter, would I think that was acceptable? Or I'd be like, absolutely not. But I just went through my life kind of going, these are the things that happened, accept this, and I can stand up for myself and be quite confrontational, but definitely not as brave as you in the sense that I sometimes didn't want to rock the boat. And this isn't because I'm weak, it's because I'm scared, like, or
Maybe
say
you're
something.
also shy.
Yeah, and scared of like those situations of highlighting something that everyone could just kind of go...
Freak out
or freak out or go, she's lying. Because I have been in situations where people have been violent with me and accused someone of being violent, and they've said she just made the whole thing up, she's crazy.
Well, they gaslight you.
Yeah, and that's happened a lot in my life. And I've been arrested a couple of times.
Me too.
And it's terrifying. I had an incident where a guy said that I pushed them or something, and he called the police and I got arrested. And I hadn't, he just said that. But then it was always like, oh, well, you did get that. That did happen. I go, no, it didn't. That was someone just doing that, and that becomes your legacy. Like, oh, you're crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm either honest and I'm standing up for myself, or maybe I'm attracted to crazy people, so they say I'm crazy.
Maybe. For me, it was really a clear-cut case of this person that assaulted me doing years of damage to my career and to my reputation, and to others that he violated. His whole thing, his stock and trade, was buying off the media and giving them a list of, if this name ever comes up, and mine was number one with a red line through it, make sure you trash them, make sure you call them druggies, make sure you say they're crazy, make sure you say they're a slut. So I've been slut-shamed most of my life. And the irony is that because I had to fight against this idea of what I was so trapped and encased in this disgusting idea of what I was that was not even close to where I was. I had to behave like the most prim and proper person, lest anybody, if I danced on a table, God forbid, anywhere, which should be someone's right to dance on a table, that would have been seen as like confirmation of what everybody was saying. And it is really hard for survivors to come out because they definitely usually get labeled as crazy, and you have to have a very strong voice and constitution to fight that. And I understand that most people don't, because it is brutal. It's not fun. But for me, it was, I kept waiting for someone else to do what I did. I kept waiting and waiting, and I was like, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. Damn it, I have to do this myself.
Thank you, Tarana Burke. Thank you to all of you fabulous, strong, powerful Me Too's. Because we are all Me Too's. And thank you, Tarana, for giving us 2 words and a hashtag that helped free us. I have been silenced for 20 years. I have been slut-shamed. I have been harassed. I've been maligned. And you know what? I'm just like you. Because what happened to me behind the scenes happens to all of us in this society, and that cannot stand, and it will not stand. We speak, we yell, we march, we are here, we will not go away.
And so I set about changing the world.
It's amazing what you've done. How do you feel now, though? Do you feel brave? Do you feel complete? Do you feel like moving on to the next part of your life? Now you're living in London, and I've seen you in London. You made lots of new English friends.
Lots of English friends. I'm in a really good place, actually. It was, the last couple of years, fighting felt like the world. But I wasn't fighting for myself. I felt like I was fighting for every person that had their voice stolen, which is legion, since the dawn of time, pretty much, in society. And how I feel now is, sometimes I miss it. I miss shooting fireballs. And I think, oh my God, am I ever gonna get that anger back? I'm kind of scared of not having it, but I kind of worked through so much of it with my book, and then the last couple of years of just
Does it help being away, like moving?
Very much so, that's why I did.
I moved to India and leave certain things behind when I moved to India, but for you, moving to England, you probably could just, it was like a breath of fresh air, stepping away from...
There's something about not being under your government's thumb in a weird way. Like when you travel somewhere, you feel freer in a way. And for me, it was just a gentler place. And it's been quite good for me with my artwork that I do and all of that stuff, and the creativity, which is what saved me really in the last couple of years. I kept creating throughout it all, and I have a visual arts project that I'm premiering in August and doing really cool things, but I had to get right again in my head. I had to get centered, and it was really hard when people don't make an allowance for trauma in the public eye, and they expect you to be, Reese Witherspoon with a knee-length skirt posing on the cover of a magazine like this. I'm not that person. I will never be that person. I've never been that person. And I tend to make people uncomfortable. It's been this weird power of mine.
If you make people feel uncomfortable, does that give you anxiety?
No, I just think they're lame.
Yeah.
It was like I used to go to dinner parties, and if the person next to me was kind of a dud, I used to always think, oh, I'm just not being entertaining enough, and redouble my efforts, and now I'm like, oh, you're just a boring human. And I remember being 11 and some girl saying, well, I would be your friend, but you're too intimidating, and I would just say, that's not my issue. It's not my problem. And so I would just go it alone. I have an album coming out, and the first track on my album is called Lonely House.
I can't wait to hear your music, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I always related to that house up on the hill by itself, and that's kind of how I set up my life. It was very lonely for a very long time, and it's only been in the last year and a half that I've broken out of the stigma that I was under. And while a lot of people slander me still, it's preferable, I would at least you slander me for something I'm doing versus something I've been painted as.
Did you ever feel like you were going to have a nervous breakdown or depression, anxiety? Did you ever feel like you couldn't carry on?
Yes. It was brutal, like seeing my attacker's face every day, his name every day. It was like a bullet, and people don't realize that, most people, unless it's a family member that does it to you, you don't really see them anymore. And this person was omnipresent in the world, just everywhere. And I felt like I came within a hair's breadth of losing my mind. And that's what they were trying to make me do.
I felt like that when I had really bad postnatal depression. So I had 4 kids, but then some of them were, and then the hormone levels, and then I felt like I was literally losing my mind. And it's the most terrifying thing. And the same thing, I was being hacked on my phones and stuff. So I then isolate myself because you get so worried about who can you trust, why is there stuff in the paper.
Sadie, how did you feel when you first found out this had happened?
Relieved that I wasn't going mad, because I didn't trust anybody. And, the closest people to me in my life I couldn't trust. And when you lose trust in your friends, your family, you begin to, it's a very lonely place to be. And it wasn't the best time in my life anyway. And I couldn't have the support I needed. But so when I found out I was actually hacked, things began to make sense.
And I felt like I was losing my mind for a while, and it's so horrible. But when you actually regain,
then you get really strong.
You get so strong, and then you put everything into helping other people. Like now, for me, it's whether I'm helping Centrepoint or for the ambassadors for the Roundhouse with all the kids in Camden who are unprivileged, or Teenage Cancer Trust. And obviously all my children's friends, I kind of can see when they're going through depression or got involved with drugs or things like that. And everything that was painful for me, I feel like I can help other people, and I really love that. And just to step out of depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, and all the things that I had, just feel really empowering and great. And the fact that I can help other people. But it took a long time, and I had to use a lot of tools and meditating, going to places in India or Himalayas, and talking to people that had gone through stuff, and wise people. And it's been a long journey, but I slowly feel life is becoming less complicated, more balanced, and all the part of a lot of the entertainment world, what we're all told that is glamorous, exciting, fun, and the fakeness, the trivialities, and there's no substance to a lot of it. I'm just like, I just want to just enjoy my life.
And have substance. And create substance and substantive relationships around you. There was, Trust is going to be the name of my next book, because that was so obliterated by hacking, by...
So were you hacked in America?
I was hacked in America. Weinstein's people, his lawyer, a female lawyer who represents sexual assault victims, came after me. And she's the one who authorized the hacking, a woman named Lisa Bloom. And so they, spread around naked photos of me to disparage me. So what I did is I actually took them back and turned them into my art project that's coming out.
So where can I see the art project?
It's premiering at the Fringe Festival in August.
Is that in Edinburgh?
That's in Edinburgh.
Okay.
I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm nervous. It's my first time ever performing live on a stage. And I start it with the song Lonely House, and I say, are you lonely on your planet? Are you lonely on the fringe? Who am I? I stand for all. And that's really kind of what I do. I feel like in this lifetime, I'm not here for myself. And I wonder, part of that is, I grew up, being a street performer, like busking and all that sort of stuff. And then later in Hollywood, when, it does feel like, especially if you're doing a job that you don't really like, but it brings a lot of people joy, because I got stuck on a TV show for a long time that was personally very difficult for me, but I'm really proud of how much people love it and responded to it.
We're just playing hooky. Uh-huh. Well, Paige, you can't play hooky because you're unemployed. I resent that. I consider my witchly duties to be a full-time job. Thank you very much.
We're having a day of beauty. I'm showing Paige how to pamper herself.
But it sets up this thing, and you're never allowed to complain if you're, or say that you're not having a good time, if you're perceived to have lived a certain kind of dream. And I had to come to the point and tell people, like, just because it's your dream doesn't mean it's mine. So step back and allow me space to be human. And upset with something or not happy with something, it doesn't mean that I'm always going to be that way. But if I think about it, yeah, it's not great. But it is now, at this point, I'm trying to figure out what it means to live for myself because I have no idea. It feels a little bit like a baby learning how to walk. I feel like drunk baby walk. I'm like kind of staggering around, and outside of the second cult of Hollywood, figuring out a new life for myself, a new way of making money, a new relationships, and so much better the relationships outside of Hollywood. I don't mean love relationships, I mean just human interaction.
Where do you want to be your home? Where do you want to be your home?
I don't have any sense of home. I have no sense.
Do you not want to find a sense of home, or you just
I don't know
happy,
how.
or is it just like wherever you go you feel a bit anchored and grounded and okay, or do you never? Or you don't?
Usually I feel like I'm about 10 inches off the ground. Yeah. So I don't know about anchoring, but I do.
Have you ever done like gone away and meditated? And no, like that would be something that I think would be really
probably very good for me.
Like the silent retreats are really good, and then I've gone away a lot and done the yoga retreats for a few weeks and just taken that time out and just that connection to the earth. You feel so different. Next week I'm doing this thing at Olympia. I had to kind of write a speech. I'm doing it with my sister, and it's just called The Art of Balance and working out how to balance your life. I just do like this little ritual in the mornings, which is pranayama and chanting and positive intentions and affirmations and creating sensory work, 10, 15, 20 minutes. If I do that every day, and I try and do it most days, I feel
quite centered.
Yeah, and because sometimes I can be like, whoa, you know,
spinning.
Years of that, and I didn't like that feeling.
I haven't figured out how to get outside of survival mode.
Yeah, you're still in.
And I hold it together. Yeah. I mean, I hold it down, but and I resent fear so greatly, and I hate being afraid. I resent it, and it drives me crazy, but there is a lot of fear involved with, you know, being a single female artist and trying to make your way in the world, right? And
you probably want a little bit of angst as well in your life to keep that creativity.
No. I think I've had enough angst for most lifetimes.
Yeah, don't want any more.
No?
Yeah.
No, and in fact, I'm a fairly undramatic person. I never like fighting, and it takes so much to get me mad. People have portrayed me in the media as this very angry person. I'm like, no, only if I think about certain subjects that should rightfully piss any human off will I get mad about it. But overall, I'm pretty jolly and happy-go-lucky. It just takes effort, but I don't know. I think I'm scared of going away like on a meditation retreat because I've never...
You don't know what could happen. Yeah, it's a bit...
Oh, I'm not that kind to myself. And I drive myself very hard, you know, and I don't know how not to. And I don't know how not to just survive. I was anorexic, you know, for a time when I was a teenager, and I now realize it was leaving an abusive household. I didn't know what else to do with myself but recreate the abuse. And I think I still have elements of that. I don't do it to anybody else but myself.
I think in certain parts of society, young girls are more aware. I think definitely if I look at my daughter and her peers and her friends, they're very aware of their sexuality and what's going on around them. I would never be speaking about certain things, whereas everything's a lot more above board. So it's a lot healthier that there's discussion. But there must be pockets of society in so many different places where still things aren't said and discussed, and when parents aren't having healthy relationships where the children feel that they can voice things. So I've always had that with my kids, but what do you think? Because you've been very vocal about all of this.
Well, the reason why I do what I do in my kind of activism is because I was curious to see if I could make the world 10% better and 10% more aware. And I wanted to just have a conversation. Let's be adult society. Let's have an adult conversation about scary subjects. And I believe in us. And I think there's a lot more conversation going on about scary subjects and things that are stressful and things that are, there's more nuance, I think, in the younger generation. They have social media pressure, stuff that we didn't have. So I'm sure there's body image things in that, and you know, the image of your life that you're presenting. But overall, you know, a lot of the young people that interact with me online or things like that, you know, a lot of them seem to have their heads screwed on pretty straight.
There's a lot of things that aren't acceptable. I know when I was growing up, my mum was like a hippie, and she's really cool, and everyone just thinks my mum's amazing. She would never judge me or my sisters. But then some of my friends' mums would say, oh, you've got to put on a bit of weight, or you're this, or you're that. Like When you talk to some of my daughter's friends, you wouldn't even be allowed to mention the word weight.
No.
I mean, it's so unacceptable to say anything about their body image. You could say, you look good today, or if you make any kind of comment
on the
with
body.
young people now about the body, there's so many kids now very early on talking about that if they're bisexual or sexuality. So much more open.
It's
They talk
so
about,
much more open.
And I mean, that's amazing because we spent years having to go through all that stuff.
I got kicked off into anorexia. I had a boyfriend that asked me what those triangles were on top of my legs. And so I became obsessed with having like a big gap between my thighs, and it just kicked me off. And I think it's usually like if you have the predisposition towards an eating disorder, you're gonna have it no matter. Someone's gonna comment and it kicks you off. But now I realized, I was like, oh, you mean the triangles? That's my thighs. And I'm a girl, I'm a woman, that's what we're supposed to have. But I didn't have the wherewithal or the knowledge to say that, whereas I think if that had happened to me now, I probably would have socked them. You know what I mean?
I've always been a bit of a tomboy, and of course there's been things that people say, oh, like for a premiere, could you wear a dress or could you do this? They'd say, oh, she looks like a boy with tits, you know, when I was younger, and I thought, oh, you know, that's a bit weird. But then I just didn't want to kind of wear high heels, be all feminine, or hated it when men would say to me, go on, why don't you put on some heels when you go out tonight? Why don't you put a dress on? I'd be like, why do I have to, you know, do I say that to you ever? It's like
no, why don't you put on
conditioning
heels?
Thing that women are supposed to go out to look pretty is to
For men.
For men, we'll do the opposite now. Like, I will dress down, higgledy-piggledy, because I just don't want to have to conform to what people think I should look like. Or if someone's making comments about my weight now, I just do the opposite. You know, I'm a bit of a rebel like that. I just don't want to be conditioned in any way.
Yeah, I had such conditioning in Hollywood that I kept myself very much like looking like how I wanted to look for a long time. And then when I did this TV show, there's something about being sold to middle America that does something to your mind, or at least did something to mine. And all of a sudden my clothing started getting really weird. It was a lot of evening gowns, high heels, and I just was like, with the hair, and I had like, my hair wants to be like beauty pageant hair. It just likes doing that, which is why I like not having hair now. And it was so humiliating on that red carpet, and I felt so powerless. Now when I put on a dress, I feel like someone's stolen a lot of my power.
And I feel the same sometimes.
And I wonder how much of that is a defense mechanism, or how much is I don't like looking like everybody else, or it's just, for me, it gives me kind of flashbacks to when I had to look like a Barbie doll, basically. You know, Hollywood will eventually get you in a lot of ways, and how people start looking there is not how they end up looking.
What I've always identified with is people on the edges of society. So now being a filmmaker, and I was an actor and done different kind of things all my life, but what I'm doing now is making films about people on the edges of society. Yeah, on the fringe, and you know, people who can't get a voice, people who don't want to tell stories about. So I want to kind of do things, shake things up, do something completely different. And the next thing I'm doing is going to India, to Mumbai, to shoot a film about the Hijra community. And it's a film in Hindi, so I've kind of like set myself, because I did a film in England which was great, but about bipolar, and had Samantha Morton in it and Billy Piper.
Hi, Violet.
Troy! You do nothing. You can't control him, he doesn't give a shit. The police have been around looking for him. Let's just go to Dad's caravan. We can go tomorrow, Mum. We need this.
Sorry, darling. I've got so much guilt. You don't understand, right?
And that was about the edges of society in England. Then I was like, now I want to go and do something in India. And
I should really challenge myself.
In Hindi.
In Hindi.
Start Hindi lessons soon. But that's that thing of just wanting to tell those stories, give people voices that don't have voices.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the biggest, the best, the thinnest, most glamorous. It's like really just feeling connected and real, and being able to do something that's a little bit different.
Yeah. I did something on my social media where I gave it away for a month, and I asked people to submit stories. I called it November because it happened to be in November. And it was about, like, what did you say no to in your life that allowed you to say yes to so many other things? Yes to the good. And so many stories, it wasn't just stories of abuse. It could be stories of, like, I said no to being treated badly by my boss, or I said no to, but people would go, like, really in depth, and it just reaffirms, like, how many stories are out there and how many we don't know, because so much has been whitewashed by colonialism, so much has been whitewashed by the media, so much has been whitewashed because it's primarily male directors and the interests don't lie in certain areas. And, you know, taking on a project in Hindi is quite a project. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely a challenge, but I think it's good. It's, apart from working, it's doing some work, or whatever you choose to do, it's having a personal journey. I see I'm a certain age and I've got a certain amount of years left on this planet, and every day is vital, and I want to experience stuff for me as well as doing other stuff. So,
are you shocked you're still alive? Because I'm always in shock I'm alive.
I don't know, I feel, you know, I've always had a fear of death, like even as a kid, really terrified of death, terrible nightmares. I still have that anxiety, panic all the time. I'm not very good with that.
I worked at a funeral home when I was 14.
When did you?
That was my first job, helping move bodies.
Oh my God.
I was actually really into it because they felt safer than the living people.
That's a good way of looking at it. yeah, definitely, yeah.
You know? The living people around me were the threat, and the dead people, I was like,
I think
cool.
You need to definitely come on a little meditation. I love, like, everything you're saying, but I think we definitely need a little bit more healing. We definitely need to get, like,
I definitely could use some healing.
So
I wish, I don't know how to do it. I thought self-care, and I swear to God, until recently meant getting manicures and pedicures.
Yeah.
Because I was in Hollywood. I was like, yeah, I practice self-care. I get a pedicure once a month. What are you bothering me about? But I always feel like, also, I think, because Hollywood was so, like, about yoga and yoga pants, I was turned off by it.
Yeah, that kind of took the other way. But when it actually...
But, like, the real places.
Yeah, the real places, and when you see the benefits and you see what it actually is doing to the way your brain functions, or your hormones, or your intestines, or your kidneys.
So divorced from my insides.
So I definitely reckon we should go on a healing retreat together. How do you think about that? Himalayas?
Himalayas,
yeah.
I would be honored.
Let's do it, and do a kindness and compassion kind of...
it actually scares me, but my book is called Brave. I like leaning into the fear, and now it's about fear of self, and I can do this.
That's
so thank
you've
you
got
for
to push
that.
yourself.
I will. Thank you.
Hey, be sure to follow the show's page on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter to catch up on all of our episodes, and join our Facebook group to become part of the conversation.